Well, let me, I'll just go ahead and introduce if that's okay. So, I have to say, so actually, so most of you might have met Reverend Carolyn Schneider, who has served as a missionary for, gosh, a number of years, was with us, when she was in China, I guess the first
Hong
time.
Kong,
Hong
yeah.
Kong, that's right, it was Hong Kong. And then, did some work, some academic work. And then, which was fascinating. I don't remember. I remember you describing and going, "Oh, that's really interesting." Okay, and then it was that book. Okay, there you go. And then was in Jamaica, and then just recently this year went to Guyana, which is very fun because I went to Guyana in seminary. It is a fascinatingly interesting place. And so it's very exciting to sort of hear about this work and about what she is up to now. So,
Yeah.
Pastor Carolyn Schneider. Yeah.
Let me start. It's really nice to be here with you. I always look forward to my visits with you. And I really, really appreciate the way that you stayed with me and accompanied me through all of these journeys. So it's makes me feel loved. So thank you.
Thank you.
Before I start, I want to say, so I don't forget, that I have some display items over there. And some of them are maps. Please leave the maps there. I did bring several copies of something I'm going to talk about in the presentation, which is the Lutheran Lay Academy. We have an information sheet, and I've brought many copies, so you can help yourself to one of those if you want. Some Guyana flags and some Guyana hot pepper sauce.
Ooh.
Be warned.
Yeah. Very cautious. Just a warning. Very cautious with it.
But help yourself to that if you want some. So I'm working in Guyana at the invitation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Guyana. And that is their logo that I'm showing you. It's a swan, and it has the date of the founding of the church in Guyana, 1743. And it was founded by a group of Dutch planters who were lay people, all of them. And they were living at that time, the Netherlands was made a colony of Guyana. And the church in the Netherlands is the Reformed Church. But there were this little group of Dutch Lutherans here in Guyana, and they wanted a Lutheran church. So they sent to the Lutheran church in Amsterdam and said, "Can we have a pastor?" And the Lutheran church in Guyana, or in Amsterdam, said, "We'll send you a pastor, but you have to show that you can pay for everything." So they did that. They got a pastor finally. And that was the beginning of the Lutheran church. They met in the home of one of the planters. His name was Lodewijk Abenzetz. So I know a lot of times when I say I'm working in Guyana, people think Africa. They hear Ghana, but I'm not in Ghana. Guyana is not in Africa. It is in the northern part of South America, right there. In between Venezuela, this is Brazil down here, and it's the only English-speaking country in South America. Yeah. And in Suriname, they speak Dutch.
Okay.
The reason Guyana is English-speaking is that the English took it over from the Dutch in 1803. So now it's an English-speaking place. So Guyana is divided into 3 provinces. Maybe you can't see that very well where you are. There's another copy on the table. You can maybe see it better. The provinces are Demerara and Berbice and Essequibo, which is over here. So if you've been hearing news about Venezuela and Guyana, there is a dispute about Essequibo, which is on the border between those 2 countries. The first church was, today, most people live along the coast. So you see all those little towns on the coast. But the first Lutheran church was not on the coast. It was down the Berbice River, down here. in the interior of the country. They had difficulty keeping their pastors, one because of mosquito-borne diseases. The mosquitoes will be very hospitable when you come. They will warmly welcome you with enthusiasm. So yeah, a lot of the pastors would die after a couple of years, and then they had to write to Amsterdam, and there's more. And so they went for many, many years, sometimes without any pastors. That's a very lay-led church, which actually is important for the present of that church. There was a slave revolt in 1763, and this is the ugly side of the Lutheran church in Guyana, that they were planters and they had slaves. And even at one point, they, as a church, purchased a plantation in the name of the church. They called it Plantation Augsburg, and they took the slaves of the pastor who had fled from a slave revolt in 1763 and put them to work on their coffee plantation. So this is the not something to be so very proud of, their history. The church moved. They actually took, there was one congregation, that's all, and they took their building and they put it on the Berbice River and they sailed it up to New Amsterdam at the mouth of the river in around 1800, just before the British took control of Guyana in 1803. So there's a picture of the old Ebenezer Lutheran Church. That building doesn't exist anymore, but that's the old one in New Amsterdam, which is where I live, in the town of New Amsterdam. That's where the church headquarters is. This is the mother church of the ELCG. And that picture was from the website of the church. So I think I put.
I think you have to go. Do you want to go back?
Yeah.
There you
So what do
go.
I
Got
do?
this.
Previous.
Click the.
There we go. So there's the website of the church. If you want to go and find, they have their history there on the website. You can read about it. They began to evangelize the enslaved people of African descent in the 1820s. It took them a very long time to baptize and evangelize the Africans. They didn't want them to be equal to them. So they didn't baptize them for 100 years, almost, you know. But by the 1820s, they had changed and said, okay, we really should be doing what Jesus said and going out to all nations and baptizing them and teaching them. So they began to evangelize among the Africans. And then emancipation came in 1838. And many of those previously enslaved people began to join the churches. And so they got their first Black members after emancipation in the 1830s. But one of the consequences of emancipation was that, now I'm going to go forward. That is the church building today that replaces the one that you just saw. One of the consequences of emancipation was that the people who had been working on the plantations wanted nothing to do with plantations. And they moved off and they started their own towns, their own small businesses and so on. So the planters needed labor. And the British government put in place a program of indentured labor and encouraged people from their other colonies to come and work on the plantations. So many, many people from India came to Guyana to work on the plantations after 1838. And so many people came and stayed after their indentured servitude was ended. They stayed. And so today, the Indo-Guyanese population is the majority in Guyana. And that is also reflected in the church. Wow.
We agreed with you.
Woo. So the church got its first Guyanese pastor, John Mittelholzer, in 1878. And John Mittelholzer, all until that time, they had only one congregation, just this one. But he began mission work among the indigenous people of Guyana down the Berbice River, which was the first for the Lutheran Church. They'd never evangelized the indigenous people, but he began that. And so they began to build more congregations down the Berbice River of indigenous Guyanese people. They didn't begin, the Lutheran Church there was kind of slow about everything. They didn't begin evangelizing the Indians who had come, the immigrants, until 1915. So a long time after they had been there, you know, so, but they did begin. And so the church today reflects all of that. It has African, Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, indigenous Guyanese members. The Guyana gained its independence in 1966. So it's an independent republic now. So this is where I work. And my house is this one. They call it the greenhouse. And my office is in this building right here. This is the church headquarters building. This is just empty right here. There are plans to make that into a Christian education building. There's the mother church, Ebenezer. It's not the only church now, because they had this. Oh, I should show you some people first. The people who work there in the office. These are the people I see every day. This is Liz. She's the secretary of the executive council of the church. This is Jenny. She handles the resources for education. This is Elosha. She is the secretary of the church, of the ELKS. She actually doesn't live in New Amsterdam. She lives in the capital, which is Georgetown. But she travels back and forth frequently to the office. And they're all very helpful to me in settling me, helping me get adjusted, welcoming me. They've been very good to me. We also have visitors, frequent bovine visitors. I looked out my window one morning, I saw 10 cows out there. So there they are. They're the bane of Liz's existence, but there they are. I like them myself. And this is one of the congregations, St. Thomas Lutheran Church in Berbice. It's very close to New Amsterdam. It's an Indian congregation. And I was there, happened to be there on a baptism. So there's little Briella, who just got baptized at St. Thomas Church. And the period of church growth really happened up until the 1960s. They grew and grew and grew and grew. They had more than 40 congregations at one point. Most of them, however, very small, like St. Thomas. This is a tiny, tiny little church. Most of the church buildings are half the size of this room. Very small. They are divided into 13 parishes. So for them, a parish is not a congregation. A parish is a group of congregations. But they began to shrink after the 1960s, especially the congregations along the Berbice River, where the church started. They had, at one point, 9 congregations there. Now they're down to 2, maybe 3 active congregations there. So it's a lot of shrinkage. The present situation is, the shrinkage is because of lack of leaders.
Yeah.
Right now they have 5 pastors serving all their congregations. They have 6 deacons, and that's it for ordained people. The rest is lay leadership. leading these little congregations. And only some of those lay leaders are trained. So at one point they opened up a training academy, a lay academy, but it wasn't able to stay open. So it's been closed now, and my job is to reopen it and to put it on a stable footing so it will be able to stay open, and they'll be able to train more leaders, and hopefully some of those trained as lay leaders will go on to become deacons and even pastors. That's the hope. So that's why I'm there. That's my role, is to be the link between the ELCA and the ELCG to help them with leadership training. So we have a lay academy, which has actually begun. July 6th was our first day of classes. So this is what people study there. If they want just to be a voluntary lay leader, they don't want to be a pastor, they don't want to be a deacon, they take 4 courses, and that is over the course of a year. So right now, they're taking biblical studies and worship and liturgy. And in January, they'll begin taking creeds and Lutheran confessions and preaching. And if they just want to be voluntary lay leaders, that's all they take. They get their certificate. They want to be deacons, they have to go on, take church administration and theology and ethics, and then do a 1-year internship. They want to be ordained, they have to go on and take counseling and church history, and then a 1-year program of supervised continuing education before they can be ordained. They do that with Dr. Winston Persad, who is himself Guyanese, now living in Wartburg and teaching at Wartburg Theological Seminary in Iowa. So he does those teaching long distance with them online, and leads them through that practicum so that they can be ordained as pastors. So that's what is happening now. In our lay academy, most of our teachers are Guyanese pastors who have migrated and are pastors of congregations in Canada and the United States. There are very few people with any kind of degree in Guyana. So we really need, the country itself is working on building up its educated population with degrees past a high school diploma. The courses that we're teaching now, these courses, we're teaching them partly online and partly in person. So even though the teachers are always online for the most part, some days the students gather in person in New Amsterdam or in Georgetown, the capital, whichever is more convenient for them. And they will, so that they can build some camaraderie and get to know each other better. So there's one of our students, Shalon Bruce. This was taken at a women's gathering in St. Matthew Church in Demerara. And there's another, that one, Marika Grimmond is one of our other students, and she is 21 years old, nursing student. She's at the youth camp there. They were enjoying the creek at the youth camp. And she is the president of her parish, of St. Michael Parish, in charge of 4 congregations in the parish. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she is wonderful. She's one of the people I hope she goes on to become a pastor. I hope so. I can't force that, but I can encourage that. Yeah, she's really good. So the church is led by an executive council, and this is the council that was just elected in May. And one of them is a student. This is Selena Lips. She's also in our lay academy as a student. This is the president, Sandra Corsius, Reverend Sandra Corsius. She's one of the pastors in Georgetown. This is the vice president, Jill Sullivan. the secretary, Alocia Smith, that you saw on the other picture. This is the treasurer, Michael Davy Ram. He was chosen, and the church is very proud of this. He was elected to serve on the finance subcommittee of the Lutheran World Federation's governing council. So they're very proud that they are playing a leadership role on the international level at the Lutheran World Federation. Then this is Pastor Chris Wordsworth, Pastor James Jones, Pastor Leroy Nicholson, Serena Lips, and Mr. Wayne Bruce. He has two first names, and I have to always.
Not Bruce Wayne. Yeah. Not Bruce Wayne. Yeah.
So, as we carry out our work in the Lay Academy, we do have a lot of challenges, and I think the technology is a challenge. You know, a lot of people don't have laptops, have never used Zoom, are just getting internet. So they're doing everything off their phones, using mobile data, and it's a big challenge to be able to do it. Many of them also work full time. So they're trying to multitask, which is really hard. That's one challenge, is the technology. Another challenge is the resources, the books. It's really hard to get things into Guyana, and they don't produce the kind of books that we're using for the Lay Academy. So it's a matter of finding out from the teachers what books they want to use months in advance, and then finding out who's coming to Guyana within that time frame, ordering the books, having them sent to that person who will be making the trip, and having them bring it over as extra luggage to deliver to the church. Fortunately, the Florida Bahamas Synod is a companion synod with the ELCG, and they are helping us pay for the books for the Lay Academy. So that's a great gift that we have. So it's too early to evaluate how it's going. We just started, but I will certainly keep you updated, and they are very excited to have the Lay Academy starting again and running again. We are hoping in the future to be able to open it up to include students from Suriname, from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Suriname. It's right next door. And they have often in the past done cooperative things. So even though in Suriname they speak Dutch, not English, but most people, if they're at the level where they're preparing to be ordained as pastors, they know English. So we are hoping to get some Surinamese people involved as well. You know, my one Surinamese Lutheran student, Raphael van Omeren, he was my student when I was teaching in Jamaica. Oh. And now he's back in Suriname, and he's getting ordained today. Oh. Tonight. I have the link if you want to watch it on YouTube. It will be live streamed from Suriname at 5 p.m. Central Time. So I'm hoping I can rope him in somehow, you know, to the Lay Academy as well. I'll be in Guyana for 4 years as I work, and I'm always reminding myself that when I'm doing my work, I need to follow these ELCA's 5 principles of accompaniment: mutuality, inclusivity, vulnerability, empowerment, and sustainability. And in my mind, the most important that I need to do are the last two, empowerment and sustainability, that I need to make them capable of carrying on what I'm doing now, so that it can be sustainable even when I'm not there anymore. So that's what we're working toward. So thank you. That is Kite Shore National Park, Guyana. Big, it's a waterfall longer than Niagara Falls. The big one. I went there at the dry season, so it looks a little skimpy, but right now it would be flowing. So thank you for all of your support and interest. Anything you want to ask or say?
So those last two on the prior screen,
Uh-huh.
how do the people feel about that? How do you get them encouraged to?
They know because I tell them.
Oh,
I'm not here to lead you. I'm here to help you get strong enough to lead yourselves and to continue leading yourselves. So they know that that's why I'm there. It does take some adjustment because they're not used to that.
Right.
So sometimes I ask them to do things that I could easily do, but they know why I'm doing that. It just takes them some time to figure out how to do it. So, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So it sounded like your curriculum for the various levels of leadership, it seemed to me like they mixed, the theology and practical.
Mhm.
I guess it sounds intentional.
Yeah.
I guess, and I guess that really was my question, that is focused on these ideas that you can't just give them theology, you need to give them some practical stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it actually reflects a lot what a seminary curriculum would be here as well, a mix of theory and practice. Mhm.
So I have two brothers who went through seminary, and that, as the one thing they say is there was not enough practical. You know, they kept saying, look, tell me how to run a church council meeting, right? Tell me how to do these practical things. So I applaud you for doing the practical things.
Yeah, well, they get plenty of practice. Sometimes they're thrown into things way before they've had any training with it. So this is an attempt to help them have a more firm footing when they're doing the things that they have to do. Yeah.
The students that are in the academy now, are they kind of all at the first level and then they finish that and hopefully move to
Yes.
the deacon?
Yeah, and there are 16 of them. I don't know if I said that. There are 16 students.
Wow.
Mhm.
What other religious backgrounds are practiced in that area?
There are lots of religions in Guyana. The top three are Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. So in New Amsterdam, I am awakened every morning by the call to prayer, and that punctuates the day from the mosque there. There are lots of Hindus because of the Indian population there. So those three are the top three.
Is that where the cows come from?
Well, I'm not sure, but the cows do roam freely around, just like they do in India. But also, Guyana, if you look on the map, you'll see down the bottom, there's a long border shared with Brazil, and that's cattle country. So there's a lot of cattle ranching that goes on in the southern part of Guyana. I've never been there, but that's what happens there.
I remember while I was there, they talk about how there are 9 religious holidays that everybody takes off for. 3 of them are Christian. I think it's Christmas, Easter, and Pentecost, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that one. I don't remember. There was a third one and I remembered being surprised by it. That was all I remembered about it. And then, but it's the 3, sort of 3 holidays of Islam and 3 holidays of Hinduism.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of everybody kind of on those days, like, celebrates with their neighbor because they're about equal parts of the population. So yeah, it's an interesting. I went to while I was there in a January. It happened to be when Eid al-Adha is in the Islamic calendar, and so I went to that festival and sort of watched the slaughter cows and all kinds of things. And but it was just kind of this celebration that the whole town sort of participates in. when one religious group is doing it. So it's really interesting.
And I went to one, a Hindu one, sponsored by the government in the government house, but open to everyone, and we know it as Holi, Holi. And I got covered with colored powder because that's what you do on Holi, you throw colored powder all over each other, so, yeah. Mhm.
So do we have information over there on your
Yes.
website on how we can, I would like to share what you do with my fellow mother of our family that lives in Ohio.
Yeah,
We just
yeah,
got
there's,
that.
you can
Great.
leave the maps there, but you can take everything else.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
What you do.